All right. So, candidly, there are notes up here. That's so nice. I was introduced to this topic as a presenter about a month ago, so bear with me. I do have some notes. I hope it's enjoyable. I do also want to preference that I'm going to be talking about coaching and coaching culture and how to start building and thinking about it. Consider this the freshman seminar version of it. If you want the 101, the 201, the graduate level version, all of my opinions, I'm readily available through LinkedIn or however you want to contact me. This is one of my favorite topics. But these are just my perspectives essentially on what I think brings the value of coaching to your culture. Before I dig in deep, how many of you utilize coaching within your teams? Not managing, but coaching. A couple hands. How many of you are interested in learning about possibly integrating coaching into your culture? A few more hands, great. I also know that we're probably all incredibly sleepy, and if you didn't get coffee, you have the lunch kind of snoozes a little bit. So I'm going to try to make this entertaining. Quickly, do I just push the green button to move along? Yeah, great. Awesome. So what we're going to learn today is why coaching, why I think coaching is important, and some differentiators there as well between coaching and managing. Common misconceptions, so things that I've heard as a coach and what you might hear if you're trying to build this out within your organization, the value it brings, some words of caution when thinking about coaching in your culture, and then I'm going to leave you with some tools you can use. So just know if I take too long until we get to that point, it's all going to be in the deck. You'll be able to go back. It's spelled out for you pretty clearly. There's a lot of detail in the slides intentionally for you in case you run out of time. And then where to grow from here. So I love hidden puns. My deck is floral, like growing, growth, haha. So you're going to hear me say things like dig in a few times. But to get us started, a couple of things to think about. Coaching and managing are often used interchangeably, especially if your office is a lean environment. And this is because they're usually coming from the same person. But there are some differences. So when you think about kind of where we go from, how do we differentiate, what do we start with? I want to start with a statistic because I think statistics bring value and the strength of your argument here. But the Harvard Business Review tells us 70% of employee development happens through direct experience, not formal training. And the reason I mention this is because it's critical to think about training as the foundation, giving them the key resources to get started, but that core learning comes from coaching and managing once they're in the role. Let's look at the difference between the two. So our managers typically organize the framework and processes to help us drive the results. So they're the ones that know your job. They know what to tell you when you're like, what do I do? What do I do next? How do I do the day-to-day? The coaches are the ones that are going to help you think bigger. So rather than just meeting your target, how are we exceeding our target? How do we think differently? I think of coaches as that one true gift that can show you the reality of the situation where you're at. So they can tell you from a different perspective, are you doing what you're supposed to be doing? Yes or no? If not, what are the opportunities that you have to consider to help you grow and develop over time? I also think that coaches are really special because they aren't necessarily in it to look at the metrics and the data. They're in it to look at you and your role, and it humanizes the role a little bit more. In my experience, I think as well that there's also an element of a relationship build with coaching that I think allows people to be a little bit more themselves, a little bit more open, a little bit more honest, but that does get some feedback, we'll call it, from the outside perspective when we're trying to grow this type of culture within an organization. Wrong button. Okay, so why am I talking about all of this? I'll get to that, I promise. So what is our common phrase of like, okay, you're putting training in front of me, you're telling me all this great stuff, or what you think is great, I think it's boring, or I think it's fascinating, whatever it is. The so what is why we're here today. I want you to consider these misconceptions as I tell you everything else I'm going to tell you. And these are true things that I've heard in my 10 plus years as a coach. I never got it, and I was successful. Not my responsibility. There's no time to do that. Where am I going to find time to do one more thing? I'm not here to babysit. Me either. My team is successful. We don't need it. I don't need a therapist. I'm not one. Is this a punishment? All of these things I've heard time and time again. These are probably my list of top 10 of why are we here? Like, what's the point? So, before I get into that, before I dig into that, I want to reference this quote. You can get more from your team if you lead like a multiplier. Why do I reference that? I shared that I want you to keep those objections in mind because typically we see two types of leaders. We see the diminisher, who's in it for themselves. They want to focus on the win and moving on. Or we see the multiplier, who is not at the table to flaunt all of their skills. They're at the table to help elevate others and maximize the use of everyone's skills. These are your biggest advocates in a coaching culture because they're seeing not just what's in front of them in their own role, but everything around them. Whether their circle is small or big, they're more observant to the opportunities at hand. And they're going to hold that mirror of reality, mirror of truth up to the situation and be interested in learning more about how do we grow, how do we develop, how do we move forward. All fun stuff. I keep hitting the laser button, not the move forward button, so I apologize for that. Now I want to think about, with these multipliers, how they can help you with the growth of the value when it comes to coaching. This is a really nice slide. It's got a lot of text on it. As I promised, this is stuff you can reference after today. But thinking about some of the key things, they help you discover and use the intelligence that you don't necessarily get to see when you're managing. When we are nose deep in those reports and looking at how are you moving forward with your numbers, what do the metrics look like, numbers, 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 and these are the ones that are asking you, yes, and. What's more? Is there an emotional element? Is this person new and they seem socially awkward? Is it just because they don't know? How do we uncover that? How do we figure that out? It allows us to make smarter decisions because we're looking at that holistic picture, not just what's on the paper. It also allows us to decrease the possibility of diminishing. You will always have a diminisher. There's always going to be some selfish or narcissistic individual that's just a rock star at what they do, and that's all they're going to be, and that's great for them. But we don't work on our own. The coaches help us leverage those multipliers to help raise everybody else up, give them an opportunity to be successful in the long term. It's also important as we're coaching that we learn from the value of mistakes. Everybody fails. We all screw up. There's two ways to navigate that. The diminishers are typically the ones that say, well, sucks for you, move on. The multipliers say, what do we learn from this? How do we apply it? How do we move forward so that we don't have to do this again? Or maybe we do fall into the possibility of doing it again, and then what else do we learn from that? A multiplier, as a coach specifically, will also play less of their cards. They're not going to put it all out on the table. They're going to invite you to offer some of your own. They want everybody to win, not just themselves. Another thing, which is like the graduate level of my coaching spiel, if you will, is asking the right questions. So easily do we fall into the therapist trap when people want to talk about feelings or get off tangent of why we're really there. And so having the ability to ask the right questions pulls you back on track and gets you intentional about the dialogue that you're having. Further, it allows us to challenge people to grow and stretch and move beyond the possibility that they think is in front of them. It allows them to see a picture that wasn't there yesterday, but could be there tomorrow. It creates that anything is possible mentality and really brings it to fruition. Finally, it allows those people who are playing those extra cards to truly invest in the ownership of what they're doing. This is super critical right now as we're thinking about retention. We have layoffs, we're losing people. That makes other people concerned about leaving. They start looking so they don't have to have that risk. There was a long run that we had for a few months. There were people like, maybe the grass is greener. I get more money, but is it worth it? We don't know. If we can invest in people owning their responsibility and their engagement and their purpose with where they are today, that not only helps them with retention and wanting to stay, it helps them be excited to stay. And when people are excited, they tend to show up a little bit differently to work and how they do their work. Push the right button this time. Now, some of the mistakes that I see, and yes, they are mistakes, is that people lose their intention when it comes to coaching. And we default, because it's not convenient to prepare for these coaching conversations, we default to looking at metrics and numbers and maybe not asking the right questions. This is a mistake, especially if you're the person that's doing the management. Come on in, guys. Welcome. Join the party. We'll pause for a brief moment so you can close the doors. Great. But when you have somebody who's doing the management and the coaching, the default is to lose that intention and just go with what's available. Coaching needs to be a mindset. We need to separate ourselves from that management component and think about the individual or the group that we're in front of and what we're truly trying to drive. May relate to some of the metrics, maybe an outcome of some of the metrics or drive future metrics. But the coaching is really centered around how do we take us from where we're at to where we want to grow. Another fun one there. No laughs, okay, that's fine. In a coaching mindset, we also need to think about how we're influencing the people that are in front of us today, but also everyone that's yet to come. So we're thinking about not just those metrics for this quarter, and we have to wrap up to meet quota, whatever that is. We're looking at, okay, where are we at today? How do I create this behavior change so that it's reflected in the generations of individuals that come to fill this role in the future? It creates an expectation, that mindset, that methodology, that natural flow of what this environment can look like. Finally, coaching takes time. We don't plant a seed today and see a sunflower tomorrow. This is something that sounds like, yeah, I can do that. Yeah, that's easy. We'll just shift it. It's going to work. No, people will not succeed, and that's okay. You have to learn from your mistakes. We have to grow. It has to be iterative. But coaching is a space that takes time, not only for buy-in, but also for it to work. If you've ever started a sport or maybe you were in theater, you know that there's different things that you have to do. It takes practice. You have to get better at it over time, and it will come in time. It's just you have to commit to understanding and owning. It will take time. So let's talk about how do we earn an A in coaching. This is where I get to all the stuff that's like, here's what I would do. If I'm curious about coaching, here's where I would start. So all those things in mind, think like a multiplier. Keep some of those mistakes in mind, keep some of those, what I've heard and learned from in mind, but to truly learn an A in coaching, ask first. When people ask me for professional advice, my number one response is be curious. My second piece of advice, stay curious. Because it's so easy for us to be like, yeah, this is great, this is exciting, and then we get used to it and we're like, oh, that excitement's not there. I'm running out of questions. Nope, keep that question generator moving. Avoid leading others to your solution. It's so easy when we see it right in front of us to be like, have you thought about this? And then give them the answer. It's okay to say, have you thought about, but what follows is the tricky part. So be thinking about how do we avoid giving them that spoonful of what they need to hear and maybe drop a few crumbs instead. Seek clarity. Don't just assume you know what they're talking about. When you're a coach, you're going to hear a lot of stuff, and sometimes there's a lot of rambling, kind of like I feel I'm doing right now. And you need to take a moment to say, can you help me understand that a little bit more? Tell me more. I say that a lot. And it's not because I don't necessarily lack clarity in what they're telling me. It's just like, help me understand the journey that we're about to go on. Where can you lead me so that I can avoid leading you? Don't offer direction yet. And I have a nice pregnant pause there because sometimes there is some guidance opportunity and to say, maybe we shift our focus from this area to this area so we can get to the result that you want. And again, all of these things sound nice in concept. I promise there's more clarity. If you have specific examples you want to walk through, I can help apply that after this, but just some areas of opportunity for asking first. Second, assume the best intentions. This is where preparation really is key. Coming in, knowing what you know, sometimes it's easy for you to assume kind of where this is going to go. You might, if you are a coach, you might come into a conversation and see like, oh, there's this person who always just wants to complain. Assume that maybe today they have an opportunity to grow in a new way. So my best advice here is to stay neutral. Don't attach your own emotions to their situation. That's not your job. Your job is to be present and to help them grow in a different direction. Avoid judgment. Again, we fail. We all do. And they're going to bring you their failures. Embrace that. Be the multiplier to say, okay, so now what do we do with that? Not the, sucks for you, move on. No, we're not going to do that. And then focus on their behaviors and what they can control. Someone else is crushing their targets, and my market just doesn't give me the opportunity for that. Okay, what are you doing? How are you filling your time? Tell me more about that. What do you think they're doing differently? Bring them back to reality a little bit here. Additionally, your role is to actively listen. Do not multitask. We are great multitaskers in enablement because we are usually the scrappiest team. We don't have a lot of funding, we don't have a lot of people, we got to figure it out. If you are in a coaching opportunity, be as present as you are able to be. That is the most critical component because this person is trusting you with where they're at. So do not multitask, please. That's my third line item. Be curious, stay curious, do not multitask. If you learn nothing else. And then paraphrase to communicate that you understand what they're saying. You understand their journey. What I'm hearing is this. Is that right? So it seems like this is kind of what you're feeling or thinking or experiencing. Am I right in that? Great. Awesome. Or, I'm not. Okay, tell me more. Tell me more. All right. That all said, that's how you get an A. That's how you do it right. That's the intro to the graduate level course. But some tools you can use today. So what can you take away from this space that you can look into more after today? These are all foundational kind of strategies that you can think about. The VIR method, vision, implementation, reflection. You're all literate. That's why we're here. You can read on the screen. But the vision, review where they've come from and where they're going. Give some perspective on what you've seen in the past that's been really helpful for someone in their role. You don't want to get into the comparison of like, well, Johnny does this today and you're doing this. So maybe you could be like Johnny. No, it's what I've seen for people similar to you in your role. Here's some things that have been successful. What do you think about that? Do you think those strategies could work? Inspire them to want to learn more. Then, implement. How do we make this into a goal? SMART goals. Everybody loves a SMART goal. How do we measure that? What's our timeline? Finally, reflect on that. Did that work? Great. What's next? How do we build on that? Did it not work? Great. What do we do differently? You don't know. Awesome. Let's go back to the vision. So this is a nice one that's like a 3-step, real easy. Okay, let's think about what we want. Let's try it out. Let's think about what happened. Repeat. Very nice snapshot. VIR. All of these are pretty uncomplicated. Again, if you've never heard of SMART, which I'm sure everybody in this room has, coaching always needs to be SMART as well. A SMART goal is probably what you've used in the past. Specific, very detailed, so that you know, did I do this, did I not? Same with measurable. Did I do this, did I not? That's really helpful in the reflection. If not, what happened? Do I need to modify that number? Do I need to modify the outcome? Or if it can't be measurable, is it mutual? Is it between two people? Do we agree on this? Does this work? Okay. Is it attainable? I'm going to make 1,000 dials in a day. Enjoy that. I'll see you tomorrow when you get 40. Again, full confidence, go for it, crush that. You got 40, awesome. Maybe we look at 45 today. Thinking about just that strategy. What's realistic? Mirror of reality. Is 1,000 dials something you really want to spend your day doing? No, great, let's pick a more tangible number. Relevant. Do you need to be dialing? You've got a calendar full of meetings. Maybe we pick next Monday to pick the phone back up and you focus on preparing for your client meetings. An idea. Time bound. I want to do 45 dials today. Tomorrow. Did you do it? Yes or no? I got 40, but I'm going to do the other 45 today. Well, your goal was yesterday. How can we make that achievable so that you can tackle that today? What do we need to do differently? Very tangible. Not rocket science here. Not that smart. Another framework that we have here is GROW. Grows, reality, options, and will. I like this one, not just because of the fun growing graphics that I implemented here, but we look at what are your aspirations, hold up that mirror of reality, where are you at today? What's tangible here? What can we achieve? What can we accomplish? What are our options? I'm a firm believer anything's possible, but I'm also a realist. So what's realistically possible today? And then how do we get to anything later on down the road? And then finally, what's the will of the situation? So what actions are you willing to do, as well as what actions are you willing to be held accountable to? So if we take this one specifically, I think is nice when you're working with a manager who's also playing a role of a coach. What actions are you willing to take to grow here? But then how can we leverage your metrics to see the results and hold accountability? That's where you can kind of play two hats. If you are a separate coach, you're an outside coach, and then you're looking at this methodology too, those metrics are nice for you to hold them accountable to see if they're following through, but might not be part of your conversation. It's just another tool. Additionally, with grow, here's some questions that you can think about when you're thinking about each step of the process. So, what would you like to happen that's not happening today? It doesn't necessarily have to be, give me your biggest vision. You want to be the top seller of 10,000 sellers across an organization. Not everybody wants to. That's okay. But maybe they're like struggling with a breakthrough. I want to own the knowledge in this product so that my team sees me as a specialist. Awesome. Let's crush that. What do you need to do to get there? What's the reality? Do you know anything about this aspect of the tool? It's a new release. It's a new go-to-market. No, I just think it's really interesting. Great. What do we need to do to get you from aware to confident, if this is something you're passionate about? What are our options? Maybe this is a little bit bigger of a bite than we thought. Is there another area that's closely aligned to this that we feel really excited about? Who might be able to help you get the education you need? The coach isn't always the problem solver. The coach, again, doesn't lead them to the solution. I might know the specialist. You might have had lunch yesterday. I want them to be able to own that, because then they will own the goal, own the outcome, and feel more confident in the end. And then finally, what are your next steps? You tell me where we go from here. Have you thought about, I might consider, also, what's going to get in the way? I know I put might get in the way, but I always like to face that head on. What will get in the way? What's going to prevent a barrier? And as I go through these questions, I know we're talking about like introducing a coaching culture. These are all stuff that you can do in your role and be more of a passive coach to help elevate the sellers that you're working with, the managers that you're working with, and it creates some trends. So if you plant the right question, you'll see it repeated. That's my favorite thing. When someone uses my language, love it. Because I'm like, oh, they heard me. And they liked what I said. Gold star for me. I love seeing other people win, but those little subtle repeats are really helpful too, because it means that it was valuable. I want you to think about all of these foundational steps, again, take time. This is not instant gratification. Maybe one-off conversations, but all of this pattern changing takes time. Solution-focused framework. So this is where we're going to look at solutions rather than discussing kind of all the warm, fuzzy stuff that we were talking about. So like, what are the intricacies of the problem that we're facing? What's the step-by-step to get us there? And this is going solution first. We want to have very powerful questions, and this is great when somebody fails, to come back and look at a solution. This is also great when they don't, but preferably when they do. Look backwards as if they have achieved the goal. This is why I like it when they fail, because you can look backwards as to what did you do to get to where you are today? And we can document that. We know what we did. We have something to work from, versus just keeping it imaginary. Now, if you're picking something future-oriented as what you want to do, it's still great. You can kind of paint that picture. You can build your perspective habits. But again, I think it's more powerful when you do this after someone's like, man, I really screwed that up, and I wanted to do this. Great. Let's talk about how we do this differently. We want to scale it. So when we have that opportunity where there's already facts and data around it, we can say, okay, here's all the things that happened. What do you think we could have done differently? How would you have navigated that? When it's a hypothetical, we can map it out. What did you do to get there? What did you commit to? What challenges did you overcome? And then finally, always imagine, get curious, stay curious. What could we have done differently? Would the results have been the same? Is there anything we're missing? Anything's possible. What else can we think of? Good, bad, and different? Let's talk through that. So again, solution-focused framework, we look at the end in sight versus planning for the finish line. So here's some different components within the framework, solution-focused, that you can ask to help kind of reaffirm some of those questions and where their thought process is, and you kind of plant where they're at presently in their brain. But thinking about it as if it was a miracle. If you woke up tomorrow and a miracle happened in whatever role you're in, everything was great, everything was a success, what does that look like? No judgment. Silly answers are fair. Like, just go for it. And then you listen, and you stay present with them. Scaling on a scale of 1 to 10. Where would you put yourself now? What's the highest you've been on that scale? What's the lowest? What were you doing? What happened? And then the action one's probably my favorite because it allows them to see themselves taking those steps. What would you be doing more of, less of, or differently to help you be higher on that scale? And the scale could be like, my dream is to run the company. Great. You are an SDR. Tell me how you get there. What do you have to do differently? Where do you have to grow? What do you have to learn? What's the next small step you can take to get there? Further, I can see, I understand. What I am hearing you say is, these are your goals. These are the steps that you're going to get there, and this is the action that you're going to take. And then we review it all at the end and say, here's your vision. Let's talk about the ways you're going to get there. Here's the roadmap that you built. Here's the next step that you're going to take. And here's when you and I regroup and talk about it again. And then do that. So solution-focused, we're on track towards targeting a solution. Again, personal perspective, it works better when they have a true example of where they failed, and you can build on that. I promise I'm getting close to the end. We'll have time for questions. AOR coaching, so trial and error coaching. This is really helpful when you need a quick coaching moment, you need a quick turnaround, we got to make some progress. Activities. What are you doing? What did you do? What does it look like? Like, what does your day look like? Objectives. How do we change that? SMART goals. We like those. They're tangible. Own it. I never set a goal for somebody else because I've seen it fail more often than not. Let them set their goal. You can offer insight and say, like, maybe I won't make 1,000 calls a day. That might not be my preference, but have you thought about starting with 40? We've only done 20. That's a pretty big jump. We could get to 1,000 someday. Also, a common one that I see with new sellers in our organization is, I want to dedicate time to studying this product. Cool. How much time? And what component? What specific functionality? What feature? Getting really specific there. And then the results. Did we do that this week? Great. Let's do it again. Let's make the shift of what we need to adjust. No? What do we need to do differently to reach that? So activities, objectives, results, very similar to a lot of the things I've talked about before, but really helpful if you have something really small that you need to focus on, especially when they're just getting out of onboarding. What are some things that are going to help them build quick confidence? If they just royally screwed up, sometimes this is a little bit too assertive and they need a little bit more of the soft coaching along the way. But that all said, where to grow from here? That's my final one, I promise. Start small. Pick one of these skills to think about, plant some seeds, get excited when people use your language. It's really fun. Define the skill. What defines the skill? Is it basic, proficient, expert? How do you determine, like, is someone at a basic level, someone at a proficient level? Are they an expert? So pick one of those areas of coaching opportunity and then help them determine, like, where are you growing in coaching? Again, be specific. SMART goals are our friend. And use a framework. Pick any of those frameworks to help you implement some of these strategies. There's a lot of great resources online to help you dig into deeper of all of these strategies. This is just like a quick snapshot again, freshman seminar. But gain consensus from your team that there's a willingness to want to open up that toolbox of resources to help each other evolve and grow amongst your culture. Skills are the abilities we have to complete tasks. That's another good one that I really liked. Some other skills that we have listed here that you can pick from. So work on uncovering needs. Work on demonstrating your expertise. Again, getting people to say what you say. Really fun and rewarding. Effectively closing. Seems simple, but also something that we can work on. Those are easy things to coach upon. These are just some basic ones that I had pulled together, so nothing that's rocket science again. Some tools for you. Think about scorecarding, scripting. It's really helpful to script. I script myself. Leverage peer-to-peer learning. Then have them take it on stage. Doesn't have to be a literal stage like today. Could be one-on-one with manager. I heard somebody talk about that. One-on-one with a peer. One-on-one with yourself. Building confidence, non-judgmental space. Get it wrong here so you can get it right there. Great. And then coach them. Again, help them get even better. That all said, thank you. I believe there's a survey at some point, so this is my plug. Please complete the survey. Say that I was really fun, if you want. I also want to say in the deck, there is a template for a coaching plan, the GROW worksheet, if you'd like, and then a glossary of some common coaching terms. I'm on LinkedIn. You can ask me all the questions about coaching. Thank you for your time, and I can answer any questions if we have time.
Yes, you had a few come through.
Okay, so it's all around me.
Yeah, so this one, I'm going to start with this one and had an upvote. Do you find it more effective to try and get an org on one coaching framework for consistency or to let people choose the strategy that they prefer?
Oh, wow, what a fascinating question. I think it's easier. I have a lot of pregnant pause because there are a lot of ideas, but I think it's easier if you have one framework to work from because then you can create consistency. Then you can create that expertise of, is this coach a beginner? Are they an expert? Are they extraordinary? And then you can show people a future roadmap. So that's more of like the multiplier mindset of, if we have one framework and we know how to do it well, we can lead others to create those habits. I don't think it's wrong to use multiple frameworks. I think that's something you can do iteratively, but I would start probably with one.
Okay. How do you incorporate coaching into meetings or one-on-ones without an awkward transition from day-to-day work items or conversations?
When I come to a meeting as a coach, I always have my own agenda. And that agenda steps away from work items. And so usually if I leave it to someone else to show up with the agenda, 50-50, if they're actually going to have something that we can coach with. That said, my agenda will usually lead into what I've done my homework on. Last time we met, you told me it was really important to you to be able to mention the price in that initial conversation. How's that been going? Tell me more about that. What would you do differently? So let them come with an agenda, but also have one available to help you steer the conversation the right way versus being like, oh, I know you want to talk about work stuff, but I really want to talk about coaching you. So can we get to me coaching you? Because that is awkward. That's really awkward.
All right, and we'll do one more here. This one just came in. As a multiplier, how do you handle active or passive resistance to your coaching?
Tell me more. 100% of the time. I have been met with a lot of resistance and equally as much support. I have had a lot of very uncomfortable conversations in my perspective because I'm coming in and saying like, hey, I feel like this doesn't necessarily feel like your cup of tea. I'd love to learn more because I do. And that's scary to eat some humble pie. But if you can face it head on and say, hey, I hear you. I see where you're at. I get that we don't all have to buy into everything. But I'd like to learn more so that I can be better at what I do. And I can appreciate where you're at. Can you help me understand that? And usually when you come at it head on, it softens the blow a little bit. I've had a few times where people are like, well, actually, I think it's a bunch of mumbo jumbo because I was successful and I never had it. I don't need therapy. Great. I'm glad you found success. I'm not a therapist. It's not my job. Maybe in another life, I don't know. But I think just coming at it head on is really the strategy, but doing it with compassion and a place of willingness to learn, staying curious, and not having that judgment of like, well, they don't know what they're talking about. No, they probably do. They probably have an opinion somewhere in there that's worth sharing. So at the end of the day, just tell me more.